Lucky you.
36 best
Turned
holes in
into
golf.
Alternate Shots podcast,
Barney's Army.
where we talk about golf,
Sandy.
poker,
James Bond.
horse racing,
Double.
classic movies.
Zenyatta.
We have no script.
Down the stretch they come.
We are glad you joined us.
Frankly, my dear, I don't give a damn.
Billy, wow.
Bobby.
It seems like months since we were doing what we want to do, which is talk about the greatest 36 holes in golf, but it's been months in podcaster days. It's probably been only a few days since we did Five West, right?
Well, you always have plans to play a good round, and then you get out there and start playing, and anything can happen. That's historical with us. We get on one subject, get on another. So,
well, no better hole at Winged Foot than that can do that to you. The 6th West, which is called L. And I assume, Billy, without doing a whole lot of research, it's sort of the shape of the green, right? Which we have some overhead shots I'll put in here later so you can see the L, or some people say the Smith and Wesson kind of pistol type of green, right?
yeah. And that has a great deal to do with how you play that second shot and where you play it from. I mean, this is a short par four. My favorite holes in golf, I think the best holes in golf are short par fours because they're accessible to any level player and they require, thinking. It's not all power at all. I mean, the big hitters drive this green. And as we know, you can 3-putt it as easily as 1-putt it. So
I don't want to get off of the West course, but you just said something that jarred something loose in my mind. This hole measures about 320, 321 from the tee. But you talk about the big hitters drive this green all the time, and I have an interesting story about that. But it's about the same distance from the tee on 6 West to the middle of the green on 6 West as it is from the white tee on 15 East to the middle of 15 East. If you recall, 15 East is about the same 326, but it seems much longer.
Well, and 15 East is hard enough to hold with a 9-iron or a wedge. So, at least this green you can bounce up on. The big hitters, I don't know if they fly it or not when they do hit it. And they don't do it every day, but they can do it. I've seen a couple guys do it. And very often right down in front.
Prior to the 2020 Open, Gene Westmoreland, he's Mr. MGA, he's just a great official, spent his entire life, fair amount of his life, and still does that, helping amateurs, playing tournaments. And he's always seems to be always at the big events. He said to me, maybe it was May, he said, Bobby, Gary Woodland came over and he hit this little buttercut drive into the wind to the back right of the green here and held the green. I'm like, wow, how is that possible? That pin is in front. Sometimes it's a few feet on the green. That's inviting the longer hitters to hit it over this trap, a little fade and roll it up, right?
Yeah. And it's also inviting, the shorter hitters to, it's accessible. If you're on the fairway, as Billy Harmon was saying the other day, if you're a little right or a little left, you're in trouble with that pin. You go 8 feet left or 8 feet right. There's no 4 left in the bag, but well, me, I inherited some kind of, maybe it runs in my family. If I'm level with that bunker there and the pins in the front, I'll putt it the last 90 yards.
Well, if you don't, and it's 90 yards, and let's say hit a sand wedge door to door from 90 yards, you might take a half a sand wedge and try to hit it 80 yards. And if you hit it 85, you're maybe right there, but there's 3 times the size of the landing area in front of that green. We talk about that with Billy Harmon, then right at the green, which is again 7-8 yards, right? And if you're left or right, you basically have to hit the best bunker shot or hit the pin in order to get a par, right?
Right. That's why, with a putter, even from 80 or 90 yards, there's less risk for me anyway of going left or right there.
Well,
it's fraught with different peril, but with a wedge, if I try and hit a 3/4 wedge, I could yank it. I could put, there's a lot of things that can happen to stick it in the ground. But a good solid player is going to hit a wedge in there.
Yeah. So the question is back on the shot from 90 yards, a little further. Yeah. So you have the whole fairway in front of you. If the pin isn't in the middle, that's totally accessible by the shot, and it's in the right side of the green over that big bunker, would you still consider hitting the putter?
I guess it would depend on if I had a Hogan working in our Junk Wolf game and a lot of different factors, but in a neutral setting, yes, I'd hit wedge there.
All right, you just said spoiler alert. It's all about the money. We'll come to
Yeah.
that in the second part of this. So you're over here to the right, 90 yards. And in 1974 in May, I happened to be with some of my buddies standing right at the edge of the shadow there. And none other than Jack Nicklaus, the greatest golfer of all time, maybe arguably, maybe Tiger and he. You can argue that all day long, but it's one of them. And at the time, he was the greatest, no question, in 1974. He's practicing in May, which he always did, several weeks before a tournament. He took a week and came around Oakmont or Wingfoot or Pebble Beach, and he'd practice to see what was going on at that point in that golf course's life. And he's there, and he had this I guess McGregor tourney. He was playing those kind of clubs back then, pretty good grooves on him. And he put his ball down, and the pin was in the right, and he hit the shot to it, and it was like 3 feet stony. And then as we looked at it, we got up on our tippy toes, it sucked back into that front bunker.
Wow.
And
there were trees behind this green back then.
But Nicklaus was practicing that shot to see how it would behave. So he knew he couldn't do that in June, a month later, when he came to the Open.
That's why the great players are great players, because practice round to them is not the same as us having a practice round for a member guest. That's just another round of golf for us, loosening up and getting a little used to the course. Practice round for Jack Nicklaus, he was learning, how am I going to play this hole under heat when push comes to shove.
Absolutely. And after he hit that shot, and he hit another one with a little less spin, and it held. I'm not a Billy Harmon, so I couldn't see what he did with the face or with his wrist or his bow wrist or whatever it was, but he had a shot with less rotation on it to spin, and it hit and kind of stopped, may have jumped back a foot or so. But then he went to the left rough and tried the same shot and see how that behaved. It was amazing to see how these professionals really, and that's why Nicklaus is the best at the majors, is he took them. Those are the most important events: the Masters, the Open Championship, the US Open, and the PGA. Nothing was more important to him than those 4 tournaments in his 25, 30 years of really playing well.
And I would say that's probably true for most pros.
Yeah. I think they learned that from him. Where Palmer or maybe Nicklaus learned it from, I'm not sure. Maybe he thought of Bobby Jones. Maybe he thought of Ben Hogan, Billy Casper. So Teddy Bunizet, look, young Teddy, right? What a character. 3rd generation Bunizet at Wingfoot, right? You ever play with Teddy?
Golfers.
You ever play with Teddy?
No, Teddy I might have played 9 holes with him once, but I got lost in the jet stream.
Yeah, he has Owen length, and maybe still one of the longer hitters there when he wants to. Now he's got a pretty good controlled shot, probably 290, 280, 300. But I remember watching him. He was playing with his dad, Eddie. Now Eddie, his father's 6 times in the finals at Wingfoot's club championship. Won it 3 times.
He was senior club champion in 2017, I think, right?
Did you play against him in that one?
No, but I watched. I saw him. He was playing Tommy Lynette, and I saw him on 10 East from the fairway bunker, stick one to like 2 feet. It was amazing. It was an amazing shot.
Yeah.
I also saw him get up and down on 13, where it looked like I think he was against Tim Holquist that day, and it looked like Tim was going to win the hole, and Eddie made a phenomenal 3 there.
And I checked in with him 6 times in the finals. He won it 3 times. I think he won it 84, 94, and 97, the regular club championship. The 3 times he lost, Buddy Stewart, Ray Darmstadt, and Sean Henderson, all very good players at those points in their life. So it wasn't, he didn't throw anything away. 6 times in the finals of the club championship. So Teddy told me he's playing with his dad years ago in the Anderson Memorial qualifier. People don't know that. You play 36 holes, 18 on the east and 18 on the west. And then the match play every other year, it's played on the west or the east. I think they bogeyed 4 west and they birdied 5 west. And they really needed to pick up a birdie or 2. And this is where you got to do it on 6, on 7, and then hold on for dear life on 8 and make a 4, 9 west. That's fabulous. But they needed a birdie desperately. And you don't necessarily get handed a birdie here on the 6th hole, do you?
Absolutely not. Absolutely. You go to the tee thinking I might be able to birdie this hole, but then along comes golf.
What does Tyson say about a plan?
Yeah.
Everybody has a plan. What is it?
Everybody has a plan until they get punched in the nose, basically. So yeah,
So
things
when
change. Yep. Or you avoid doing that and hit it a little extra and fly to the back of the green. And now what do you do? So
right.
it's
So
like a lot of winged foot greens. Once you miss them, you got issues.
So Teddy told me two stories. So the one with his father, I'll come back to in a minute. They really need birdies. So another time he's playing Mike Leon in a club championship, and he drove the green, but the pin was back right. Now he had drove it far enough into the middle of the green where he had to look at it.
Right.
And he said the greatest thing in golf, or what did he say? He says there's no better feeling in golf than driving it on the green on a par 4-1, but no worse feeling than walking off with a 3-putt par.
Yeah.
So Mike Leon got away with one there. Teddy fortunately beat Mike in that particular match in the club championship. But back to the Anderson where they needed some birdies. Teddy gets up. Eddie hit it perfectly right here by the shadow at 90 yards in. Teddy gets up and laces one. It was a dead straight bullet. The pin was 10 or so paces on in that middle area. I swear from the tee, and I have pretty good long vision, he lipped out. I swear he lipped out. He had a 7-footer, made it 2. He didn't make a birdie, he made an eagle. So how about that?
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So 6.
You know, that's a game they're playing a different game than I ever played.
90 times out of 100, a par is a fabulous score, right?
Well, if you're playing the Wolf game, which a lot of us play with the sheet, you know, that's an episode of podcast by itself, but we play all kinds of junk, and one of the junks that you want to have is a Hogan. And to get a Hogan, you basically have to get 2 Hogans in a row. A Hogan is hit the fairway, hit the green in regulation, make par or better. But you have to make one of those in order for the next one to count. Right. So you want to get what we would call a pre-Hogan here every time, because you're going into a par 3, which if you have the pre-Hogan, you're now open to a greenie and a Hogan.
Yeah, we'll get into junk golf as we go, because there's Liberace's and there's Jim McGreevy's and all these wonderful. There's the Rosenbergs. What's the Rosenberg?
If you hit it off the electrical boxes, it was named after Ethel and Julius Rosenberg, who
they hit it off the electrical box. Let's just say
the electrical boxes kind of hit it off them too.
Is this the best place on the West course? Because you could have made the pre-Hogan on 5 West, right?
Yeah,
and now you're coming here.
There. Yep.
Yeah, 5 West, and now you've got a seemingly easier chance to finish the 2 pars, perfect par, Ben Hogan pars in a row, right?
Right. Well, if you've established a pre-Hogan on 5, it's even more important to continue it on 6. You always want to have a pre-Hogan going into 7.
So is there another area on the West course or on the East course where it's to your best advantage to make a Hogan? Is it like 2 East and 3 East, or one East and 2 East are good Hogan candidates?
1, 2, 3 is good. Yeah. 1, 2, 3. If I'm playing the Wolf game and on the East course, I'm thinking Hogan right out of the gate. That's optimum.
Did you ever hear the story of the 3 Maxes? And so I have to look at my note. In the 2013 Anderson, the 3 stories, and this involves Westchester Country Club. So 2 very good golfers from Westchester Country Club come over to Winged Foot. Max Buckley, who played with my son in high school, really good player, really an outstanding, and Max Christiana, both outstanding young men and they came to Winged Foot representing Westchester Country Club, and they ended up winning it. And somebody said, "What about the other Max?" I said, "What are you talking about?" He said, "Max, our very famous Winged Foot caddy for Max, and Max from Westchester."
Oh, that's great. Yeah.
The 3 Maxes.
They maxed out.
So basically, okay, it's not about the money. Let's go, Billy. This has to be talked about here. So, I was very fortunate last Friday. I met and spent a bit of time with Claude Harmon III, Claude Harmon's grandson, Butch Harmon's son, right here in Jupiter, and we were talking about it. And I hope to get into that in detail with him. He may want to come and share the details. I'd rather have him share the details because he was there. But he's not the first person, that tells me if this is the subject of LIV versus PGA Tour or European Tour, right?
LIV versus any tour, or LIV, just the whole concept of LIV is, in my opinion, it's all money driven. It's not even LIV versus PGA. It's just with or without the PGA, it's money driven. It's not anything else. I don't think there's any kid alive that had aspirations of growing up to play golf to make money, to make millions of dollars. Maybe nowadays it's true. I don't know. Maybe sports has changed that much, but certainly Tiger Woods, when you see him as a kid saying, when I grow up, I want to beat Jack Nicklaus and Arnold Palmer. He's not saying when I grow up, I want to get a huge contract from Nike and make tons of money. You know, in baseball, the same thing. You get guys like George Brett, who was famous for saying, I can't believe they pay me to do this. I'm sure Willie Mays didn't aspire to make a fortune playing baseball. I'm Jackie Robinson. Maybe the world's different now. You know, you see someone like Aaron Judge, he's certainly different. His loyalty to the Yankees was based on dollar signs, plain and simple. I guess that's the way sports is going. I think it's unfortunate. But in a sport like golf, the fan base is kind of unique. Football, baseball, your fan base is probably more local. That's not always true, but New Yorkers root for New York teams and Californians root for Californian teams. And I'm sure, you know, Texans root for Jordan Spieth because he came from there, but other people root for him too. But it's less of a loyalty thing. But to tell me that you're playing on the LIV Tour for anything but money is ludicrous. Because what are you playing for?
Right. I mean, it's Joe Rogan, who's certainly a loud voice in the podcast world and the media world, and he's got some very interesting points. Some points you don't agree with, but that's the whole thing. When you look at a great movie, wasn't the whole plot a conflict? Aren't the great a suspense is the who did it, or in a plot? It's the conflict, and Joe is creating conflict with what he says, and he says,
Sure.
Look, you know, he says something like, well, you know, if let's just use anybody that went to the LIV Tour, and I'm not picking on anybody. Let's DeChambeau or Dustin Johnson, whoever. If they hit a fabulous shot into a hole, if they hole out on 6 West, their driver for a 1, that's off the charts. They want that. They want to put it up in their Twitter and their this and that and so forth. Apparently, they have to get approval from the tour. Guess what? That's the rules, right?
Yeah.
Well, did Willie Mays get to use his last home run without asking Major League Baseball?
No, or you know, NFL licenses stuff. You know, Eli Manning can't go out there and sell his own stuff without permission. That's when you work. It's true in the whole business world. It's intellectual properties. If you work for IBM and come up with some brilliant idea, IBM owns it. That's just the way it is. And it's not that, you know, a knock on you, but without them, you don't get that idea. You don't get that opportunity. Without the PGA Tour, you don't get that opportunity. And now with the LIV Tour. So, you know, unfortunately, money is driving so much of this that it's disconcerting for people who just love the sport. And the sport and the material impact that money has on sports is very visible. But again, you know, for LIV to compete with PGA, that's almost like saying, can you imagine somebody thinking, you know, I can make an NFL myself, all I need is football players? That's not going to work. It hasn't ever worked. It never will work.
It's to be determined. So we'll see what happens. But to say
know
that you're going over there for any other reason than the money right now. Look, if a young player, and you can pick anybody, 24-year-old player, just got married, has a child, maybe had a good year in the last 2 or 3 years on the PGA Tour, $1.5–2 million or whatever it is, didn't even win a tournament, still won that kind of money, got sponsor money and so forth. But somebody approaches them, and maybe this is Cam Smith, and gives them sick amount of money, 40, 50, 60 million dollars in a lump sum that you put into Chase Manhattan Bank today. Sure. Well, okay.
That's more power to you, but don't tell me it's for any other reason than the money.
If you're the top guy at you know, private equity fund 1 up in Fairfield, Connecticut, we don't even have to name who that is. And the guy down in Palm Beach who's buying up Palm Beach says, you know, Billy, you're making $25 million a year. We're going to give you $75 million a year to come over to our firm. And they're still both in the top 5. You're on your way. Yeah. Right. You're going to do what you love. You're going to do it for triple the amount of money.
But am I going to say it's because I like the way they handle business better? I like the location better. You know, you could come up with, those are all maybe pluses in the column, but it's the money. And I have nothing against that. You know, everybody argues about these are bad guys giving them everybody money, but that's not even the point. I'm just saying, if you're a young aspiring golfer, are you playing to make a ton of money? Maybe some people are, or are you playing? Are you going to LIV Tour because it's a lesser competition? They play less holes, they play less tournaments, there's less notoriety, and there's basically, you win a LIV event, who cares?
Thanks for joining us
Casper,
today.
Billy
We
Harmon,
really appreciate your
Double
feedback.
Indemnity,
And please
Arky,
subscribe to the
Two
show
Outer,
and hit the
Claude
bell
Harmon,
icon so you get notified
Movie
of
Classics,
new episodes.
Mark Gable,
Hit 'em
Odd
hard
Job,
and hit 'em off.
Best 36 Holes.